Greetings, travelers. Stay a while and listen. It's your boy Skip, back with another video. Today we're exploring the dice rolling mechanic in Okkam. So, following from the last video, if an action is reasonable, if the requirements are met, and if there are risks, then you roll the dice to find out what happens. Let's dig into how that works, okay? We're gonna go to the rolling the dice page. The basic mechanic here is whenever a PC acts or reacts under pressure, when something's at stake or something could go wrong or there are obvious risks if they fail, you're gonna roll 2 6-sided dice and you're gonna add a series of modifiers. There are 3 kind of like beneficial modifiers, and there are 3 like disadvantageous or detrimental modifiers. And let's talk about how those work. So you're going to add or subtract relevant modifiers from the total of 2d6. You're going to get a +1 modifier if a helpful tag is declared. So you have to say which one you're using, and it has to be obviously relevant. Observant might help you watch for trouble, but cooking does not help you in a fight, right? No egregious overreaching. It has to be declared. It has to make sense. You're going to add 1 for advantage due to position, preparation, help, circumstances, or helpful conditions. This is intentionally very open-ended. The idea here is that if players are engaging in the imaginary environment and like thinking about their surroundings or their plans, that's worth advantage, right? It's pretty wishy-washy and open-ended, but the idea is if a PC is thinking about the game world and thinking about what's happening in the situation and how they can maneuver for advantage, then they get advantage. This is a narrative tool more than anything else, right? Almost anything is reasonable if they describe a very specific way of doing something, or another character can describe how they're helping the action, or if they can describe how the circumstances are advantageous, it counts. Notably, though, items do not give advantage by themselves, okay? Having a rope does not give you advantage at climbing, it just lets you climb. Having a first aid kit doesn't give you advantage at wrapping a wound, it just satisfies the requirements for performing that action. So items by themselves do not give advantage. Now, certain special items, you may, create some kind of special item that does give advantage on certain rolls, and that's kind of how magic items work in Okkam, right? But advantage. The next bonus modifier is +1 if the PC spins 1 resolve before rolling the dice. Basically, that's what resolve does, right? You start with 3 resolve and you can spend 1 to get a little bonus. You have to do it before the roll. You can't roll and then say, oh, can I add 1? Because the idea here is that right as you're performing the action, you're kind of choosing to lock in, to focus, and to harness your inner whatever, like tenacity or grit or plot armor or whatever it is. That's what resolve is for. Before the die roll, you declare you're going to spend a resolve, you get a +1. Now onto the penalties. You're going to get a -1 to your total if the action involves extra difficulty due to the complexity, magnitude of the desired effect, or a feature of the target or object. Difficulty is related to the action itself, not to the situation. So, trying to target a larger than normal number of creatures, like calling a shot, like trying to go for a headshot or hit a bullseye versus just like making a shot. Extra complex or complicated or finicky actions, like picking a master lock, or convincing someone when like it's not impossible but a really massive ask. That's what difficulty is for. Anything that's extra difficult by virtue of what you're actually trying to accomplish, not by virtue of the circumstances, is going to be the difficulty modifier. The next one is disadvantage. Disadvantage is the opposite of advantage, right? So due to being overwhelmed, ill-equipped, bad circumstances, or hindering conditions. Things like darkness, lack of equipment. So yes, lack of equipment counts against you, but having equipment does not give you a bonus. Sorry. Overwhelming numbers, resistance, opposition, but also importantly is hindering conditions, right? So like this is where, you know, if you're concussed or exhausted or hungry, you're going to get a -1, and that's disadvantage. Trying to hack a network with like a shitty old cyber deck or a concussion, either one of those things would be disadvantage. The next negative modifier is you have a -1 if the PC is hindered by 3 or more conditions. So if you try to jump a pit with a sprained ankle, you're going to get disadvantage. If you try to jump a pit with a sprained ankle, a concussion, and extreme hunger, you're going to get this additional -1. That's pretty self-explanatory. Only relevant conditions count, though. For the advantage and disadvantage, only relevant conditions count. If you're trying to convince a shopkeeper, or trying to hack a terminal, and you have a sprained ankle, that's not gonna affect that action, so it doesn't count for modifier. Likewise, if you have an invisibility potion, that might be an advantage in certain situations, but it's not gonna help you climb a rope, right? That's it. You count up all the modifiers and roll the dice, and then you're gonna do the math there. So if you roll, for instance, let's say for the sake of example here that I had, and by the way, there are examples further on in the text. Let's say for the sake of example that I have a helpful tag. I'm trying to convince a security guard to let me into a building. I am suave, so I have a tag that helps. I have advantage because one of my buddies is being super distracting and pretending to be a nuisance around the corner. And then I'll go ahead and spend resolve, so that'll give me a +3. But let's say that I have a scar as a condition that makes me less charming, so that would be a -1. And let's say that the guard is extra alerted at the moment because whatever. That would be a +3, -2, total of +1. I roll the dice. 7 + 1 is what? Nailed it first try. 8. You're trying to beat a 9, which will be explained in a second. But basically, yeah. So it says each modifier counts only once. What that means is you cannot spend 2 resolve. You cannot declare 2 tags. You cannot have 2 disadvantages. Each one of these counts only 1 time. If the result is 9 or more, the action succeeds. That's intentionally high for a reason. Because here's what happens when you don't hit a 9, right? There's no outright failure. If you don't hit the 9, you're going to choose a consequence. The idea here is that nothing never happens, right? When you act, nothing never happens. Something always happens when you succeed or don't succeed. Rolls are risky, right? Risks are things that change the narrative either way. So there's no failure. In Okkam, there is no such thing as like, oh, you didn't do it. Anyways, right? We don't go that direction with this game. We're going to talk about it more in detail here. So if you fail to hit a 9, you're going to pick one of these 3 options. The first option is a reduction. The action has lesser or no effect. Success, but with diminished or no effect. Your punch merely pisses off the ogre, not wounds them. Another example is like a reaction. So let's say an NPC lunges for your character's weapon and, to disarm you, okay? And you go to dodge. If you don't hit a 9 on your dodge fails to occur. No effect. And that would mean that they disarm you. Reduction is kind of the it didn't work option. But remember, nothing never happens. However you arbitrate reduction, something new happens. The environment responds. There should never be that like, well, I don't know, try something else moment. Otherwise we're not rolling, right? The second failure option, second consequence we're calling them, is a complication. Success, but lose an item, take a harmful condition, or cause collateral damage or other unintended side effect. Broken gear, collateral damage. This is also how PCs incur injuries and stuff, right? So let's say, for the sake of example, a boulder is about to fall on your head. What do? I dodge out of the way. Okay, I'm gonna fudge this roll a little bit. Bam. Oh, you suck, bro. You failed the roll. So I'm gonna say that you're gonna take a complication. You are not killed by the boulder, so you technically succeed in your attempt to dodge. You don't die, but you may get injured instead. You dodge out of the way of the boulder, but it catches your foot at the last second, and you have a sprained ankle, or whatever, a macerated ligament, or whatever the case is. So this is kind of an important thing that is implied here, but not stated outright. It's stated outright a little bit later. But like, when bad things happen to you, when someone tries to stab you or shoot you, or when a piano falls out of the sky, Looney Tunes style, the intended consequence is death, right? Like, that's what the person is trying to do. If you like succeed but with a side effect, you have successfully not died. You're injured instead. You've successfully avoided being smashed to smithereens by the falling piano or anvil. Instead, you were temporarily flattened, right? That's how this works. The third option is an interruption. Before the PC completes the action, a new obstacle or challenge appears that they must contend with first. Something else, most likely worse, happens before your action goes off, right? As you try to, sneak past the guards, the alarm blares. As you aim for the sniper, a tank smashes through the wall, covering you with rubble. It creates a new obstacle or challenge that you have to deal with now. Yeah, that's the three choices you have when you don't succeed at a roll. You take one of these three consequences. It always keeps the action moving forward. We don't want to see the PCs fail, right? We want to see, well, we'll get there later. The last thing on this page is PCs may exhaust a tag if they declared it to re-roll the dice. Exhausted tags may not be declared again until the PC rests. So that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're not happy with your roll, you can re-roll the dice. This is a prototype copy. The text here has been adjusted to state that, and you'll see this in the PDF. You get the same modifier. So if you rolled with a +2 or you didn't spend resolve, you can't do it later. You're gonna re-roll the dice with the exact same modifier, and you can, re-roll basically. But then you can't use that tag again. You can't declare it until you rest. There's a couple more. That's the basic dice rolling mechanic. There's a couple other things here that we'll go through real quick. For group actions, foraging, leading the party across a narrow precipice, avoiding spotlights, anything that makes sense for one person to kind of take point and get everyone else through the obstacle on. You can elect the PC to lead the effort. They act with advantage, but the entire group suffers any potential consequences. Yeah, if it makes sense, you can do this just to speed things up and prevent any one player from feeling like the shitty, weakest link just due to random chance. Next thing, there's no outright failure. The story always moves forward. However, the severity of the consequences should match the action and the desired effect. This is basically just like if you try to one-punch a dragon in the mouth, even if that's reasonable for you and the requirements are met, if you take a consequence, you're going to have a really bad time in comparison to, say, punching a shopkeeper in the mouth, right? Heavier risks equal heavier consequences. Choose your actions wisely. For immersion, the guide can arbitrate modifiers and conditions and narrate the outcome of PC's actions. If the group prefers collaborative storytelling, the PC's player or anyone else can suggest modifiers, conditions, and outcomes instead. This is basically just like, the guide can say what happens if you prefer an immersive story, or you can let whoever else do it, right? Like it totally depends on your table and your needs. I personally like to allow players to narrate their own successes and consequences after rolls, but this is going to be heavily dependent on your group, their experience level, their like comfort with improv, your group dynamics, and everything else. Just find something that works for your table. You can have the guide narrate the outcome of all actions. You can have PCs narrate their successes and the guide narrate their failures. Any combination, figure out what works for you. And I've told you my personal preference. Let PCs decide their own stuff. Let them decide their own consequences. I promise you, if you give them the opportunity, they will screw themselves just as hard as you wanted to. Let them choose. Do you want a reduction, complication, or interruption? Let them choose. You want a complication? What are you going to break? Right? Give them the power. Agency is key. If there's anything you can take away from this book, agency is key. All right, the last thing I want to show you here is down here, there's a table that shows the chance for success for different modifier totals. You can see that a straight roll has a pretty low chance of success. This is intentional. First, rolls are only for risks. Avoid risks, avoid rolls. Avoid risks by planning, teamwork, setup, everything else. You don't have to, right? Some people love just like taking risks and rolling dice constantly. That's totally okay. But you can have more success if you don't like YOLO everything. Also, consequences in Okkam kind of mitigate these low chances of success. You're not gonna die, right? Like that's not what we want in this game. We want PCs to succeed. Failure's not the end of the world. We want to see what the PCs will pay and how they will suffer in order to eventually get what they want. That's the interesting part. And again, you can't really die in Okkam unless your group agrees that's a possible consequence, which when we get to the other rules section, come on, the death rule in a couple weeks, we'll talk more about what that might look like for your group. But in general, we want to see what the PCs will sacrifice. We don't want them not to achieve their goals. We don't want them not to find the secret doors. We don't want them to get killed by the boulder, or we don't want them to not sneak past the guards. We want to see all of the sacrifices and the hijinks and etc. that they're going to get into in pursuit of what we want them to eventually get, right? That's it. Questions, comments, concerns, hit me up in the comments down below. I'll see you next week when we talk about rest and advancement. That's all I got for you this week. Peace.